Let's turn again to 3rd John, and we will conclude this divine will or divine wish. 3rd John. The elder, to my dear friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Dear friend, I pray that you are prospering in every way and are in good health, just as your whole life is going well. For I was very glad when fellow believers came and testified to your fidelity to the truth, how you are walking in truth. This is a testimony of fellow believers. So it's not him just testifying by himself. I have no greater joy than this, to hear that my children are walking in truth. Dear friend, you are acting faithfully in whatever you do for the brothers and sisters, especially when they are strangers. They have testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their journey in a manner worthy of God, since they set out for the sake of the name, accepting nothing from pagans. Therefore, we ought to support such people so that we can be co-workers with the truth. I wrote something to the church about Diotrephes, who loves to have first place among them, does not receive our authority. This is why, if I come, I will remind him of the works he is doing, slandering us with malicious words. And he is not satisfied with that. He not only refuses to welcome fellow believers, but he even stops those who want to do so and expels them from the church. Dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. The one who does good is of God. The one who does evil has not seen God. Everyone speaks well of Demetrius, even the truth itself. And we also speak well of him, and you know that our testimony is true. I have many things to write to you, but I don't want to write to you with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. Peace to you. The friends send you greetings. Greet the friends by name. Now, we're talking about 3 John 2. I wish above all things thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. The context is the theme of hospitality that runs throughout the book. And so we learn that hospitality in the Bible is not just giving somebody food or a place to sleep at night. In those days, for lack of five-star hotels and the lack of technology, when a person travels, he will normally be staying with a house church 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And some people started taking advantage of that. They become freeloaders. They go from house to house. And Paul puts it that they are taking advantage of old widows. And so I was mentioning this morning that part of proper hospitality is you don't allow others to take advantage of you. And when you allow others to take advantage of you, that's one of the ways by which the devil is stealing from us. And the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And so there needs to be wisdom on how we spend the wealth that God is giving to us. So when they use the word hospitality, they are talking about not only giving food and drink and place to sleep, but sending them off with money. The context are traveling missionaries. And we ended this morning saying that we in our church here, we try to be generous to people who come, whom the Lord sends our way. And that is why I don't just receive anybody. Because in the Philippines, there's a lot of people that travels, and I don't know who started this, but it is what we have right now. They put on their belt, I have been to this country, I have been to this city, and they collect, how do you call this? remembrance. How do you call that? Souvenirs, yeah. They collect souvenirs. I have been to as if their spirituality is measured by how many cities they have been from. The key and the reason why ministers should visit and be able to minister to other churches is so that they can impart spiritual blessings. If somebody comes or if you go and you cannot impart anything, you have no business going. Okay? And this is one thing that we have overlooked already. People think, well, I'm going to go there. They ought to have me preach. No, they don't need to have you preach. I mean, for example, our nurses, when they go with me, they do medical missions. Why? That's what they can give. They are medical, they are practitioners in medical field. And so when we bring doctors or dentists, that's what they do. They don't take the pulpit and say, well, let me minister to the pastors, especially the non-pastors. How in the world are you going to minister to pastors if you yourself have not been one? And so we need to be able to entertain. Paul puts it this way: be careful when you entertain strangers, because you may be entertaining angels. You see, that's hospitality. And again, because of lack of support in those days, when traveling ministers in the early days travel, even in modern time, they really live by faith. You know why we have rest areas in the Midwest? There's abundance of rest areas, especially in the Midwest. Midwest was the hub in the early days of, you're talking about 19th century and up to early 20th century, but mainly 19th century. Midwest is very popular among traveling ministers. And so rest areas were actually real rest areas. These are small cabins that a traveling minister will go to rest. Not only to rest, but somebody should help her. Not only to rest, but how do you call this? To wait for the guidance of the Lord. And so I've read, for example, a missionary in the Midwest traveling through here. When they do revival meetings in those days, they'll be holding meetings for 2 months, 3 months, nightly meetings. And no papers, just announcing, we're going to go there. And then they'll collect offerings. And they have nowhere else to go until the Lord tell them, go. And there are tons of testimonies where in traveling ministers like this will do that, and they will have no place to go afterwards. So they'll find a rest area along the road and fast and pray there until God tells them, go east or go west. That's how they were in those days. Yeah. That's why the love gift, the offering, that's where it came from, was very important. But now, when people minister to you spiritual things, you should minister back carnal things. That's what Paul said. Now that is being ignored. Okay? Who is this? Jesse Duplantis. I don't know if it's still there. When he started preaching, he was testifying at one time. I think he preached for something like 2 weeks. And he always testified this whenever he does ministers' conference where we go. Some 2 weeks of revival meeting. At the end of 2 weeks, the host shook his hand and said, thank you so much for ministering to us. We're truly blessed. Souls were saved. And now he was a traveling minister. Traveling minister is very unique because they have no money. They just travel and depend on the gifts of the people. And so that kind of traveling minister is no longer around today because most people are attached to a local church. They have their own means of making a living. So Jesse Duplantis said after 2 weeks of revival meetings, after they were blessed, the host shook his hand and gave him a love gift. 1 bottle of Dr. Pepper. Yeah. And Jesse said, I can't believe. This is all I have. 1 bottle of Dr. Pepper. And so what he did was he did not drink the Dr. Pepper. He kept it as a souvenir on how stingy churches can be. Yeah. But that is just the way it is. I told you the testimony of Bishop Ray. I mean, he was very sick at one time. He traveled from here all the way to California so that he can send something like 9 balikbayan boxes of supplies, 9 or 20, I forgot the exact number. He told me this. He said, pastors, he said, Filipino churches, and he said it in Tagalog. I cannot translate it in English because I don't know how to say it in English. He said, ang kunat. You know what that means, ang kunat? No, it's more than stingy. What is makunat is, like you cannot break it, right? It's elastic. You wanna break it already. Ang kunat talaga. Meaning, kahit anong parinig ang gawin niya. Yung iba kung sa parinig, wala talaga, hindi talaga magdukot. You know? And this is what Bishop Ray told me. Ang kunat. You know? Maybe that's why when I was planning to do itinerant ministry here, after the other church, maybe that's why the Lord did not allow me to have that. Maybe I'll just be angry all my life, you know. Can you imagine if they give you Dr. Pepper? And Jesse Duplantis said he went to the Lord and cried to the Lord. And said, Lord, what am I going to do? Lester Summers said the same thing. He said he was in California, one of the big churches there. And after doing revival meetings, he was going to go to Australia. The minister just shook his hand and said, thank you. And doesn't know he doesn't have money. And said, I know you are rich. And that is when he told the Lord, I'm not going to leave my hotel room until you pay for my ticket going to Australia. This is how these traveling ministers are treated. That's why there are very few real traveling ministers now. A lot of them have churches. Like, I travel, but I cannot be classified along those people. I have a base. That's why a lot of people build a base. And they can beg. I'm telling you, they can tell stories, which John will mention later. They can tell you stories like you would think Satan himself showed up and tried to kill them, just so they can squeeze money from the people. And that becomes very embarrassing. Can you imagine a minister of the gospel begging for money? So some people doesn't like to become pastors, you know. They don't like to become ministers. I never want to become a pastor. I'm okay with teaching. It's because of the way some of these pastors are treated, the way they beg for funds, and now the more I know it, and this is what John is emphasizing here, because Dio Tripis stopped being hospitable to these people. So let's look now at hospitality, generosity in 3 John. You will notice that Dio Tripis was not rebuked by John because he came up with some bad doctrinal issues. John did not say he's teaching wrong. His doctrine is good. He's orthodox. Dio Tripis also, there is no record that he's denying that Jesus came in the flesh. And there is no record that Dio Tripis left the church. He stayed in the church. So some people say he's a church leader. He's a house church leader. In those days, they have plenty of house churches because although there's a lot of converts, they cannot just build buildings. It's very expensive. And so what they do is from house to house. That's why in the Bible, when you say from house to house, those are house churches. You know, we compare them now to cell meetings. Yes and no, not really. Because they have no way of holding services. So that they will go from house to house, and that's how they come up with, they have 3,000 members. Any place in Jerusalem you can gather 3,000. There's none except the temple, you know. And the temple is run by the priest. They will not allow Christians to go there. And so house-to-house meetings become very important. These are what we will call as house churches. Dio Tripis handles one of these house churches. The problem that they have with house churches or cell leaders is the same problem that we have today. House churches was popularized later on in the modern times by Yonggi Cho. That's why, you know, the neon lights. If you go to where we live, you enter this street. I don't know what that street is, and you find a Korean church with big red neon light cross. The Koreans started that. During the night, during the 80s when I went to Korea, during the night we were in a hotel. You look at Korea from a certain height. You will find these crosses, neon light crosses. These are not church buildings. These are crosses from houses to indicate that there is a house church or a cell church in that house. And so D.L. Tripp is one of these leaders. No accusation of bad doctrine. He did not leave the church. He stayed. But he's a big problem. Okay? How is that possible? We'll find out later. Now, this is what spiritual leadership look like, biblically, okay? You receive the truth. Like I receive the truth. My doctrines are not original. If they are original, they are wrong, okay? No original doctrine. All doctrines come from God. And so somebody discipled me. When I got born again, I am basically discipled by the literature coming from Gordon Lindsay. And so every book that he has published that is in the Philippines, I've read. I mean, none escaped my eyes. I've just read them all. All the books that this guy Till Osborne has, I've read them. And I've read other books. But this, how I was basically discipled. I remember when the son, Dennis Lindsay, now president of CFNI, when he first came to the Philippines, came to our church, and the way my pastor introduced me to him is, "Hey, Dennis," he said, "I want you to meet Pastor Jose Nacionales." And we shook hands and says, "The guy was discipled by your father." I was surprised. The guy was discipled by your father. It's because he knew I read all of the literatures of Gordon Lindsay. So, and then I came under certain ministries, the Samurals, of course, and a couple more pastors, and I learned from them. Meaning, I didn't come up with a new doctrine. Something was passed on to me. Okay, that's why when I was ordained into the ministry, hands were laid on me, something was passed on to me. So now that is how truth is passed. God spoke to Abraham, and then that knowledge continued to increase, but it's living by faith. And so now that I become a depository of that knowledge, there came a time I became an official leader in the church. I taught in Bible schools, became an associate, handled ministries. How do I do that? By passing on what was given to me. By the way, that's why there's a lot of corruption in the ministry right now. Because a lot of ministers right now are no longer being trained by ministers. They're being trained by executives. For example, back in my days, if you want to raise money, you ask for pledges. Now, because we have been taught by executives, we scheme now on how to sell books. Don't publish. Even devotionals right now, I was told, don't publish 1-year devotionals. Nobody wants it anymore. Monthly. I am a subscriber because we help, we support. I am a subscriber of one very famous minister here in Dallas, Texas, the First Baptist Church there. And now they send me monthly devotionals. I don't even read them because I do my meditation from the scriptures, not from those commentaries. But that is a way of making money. They come up, some of these are because of executive training done by non-born again. Case in point, the Willow Creek Community Church. A lot of their speakers that train pastors are not serving God. They're serving the devil. And, but they are very successful. They are millionaires. They are politicians. So the scheme of leadership is this. You receive the truth, and then you share the truth. At some point, after you share the truth to somebody, you expect that somebody who received the truth from you to share it to others. That's why Paul can tell his recipients, some of you ought to be teachers by now. But somebody needs to teach you elementary doctrines. because they are not living or passing on what they have been given. By the way, I can say the same thing. Yeah, I can say the same thing. Growth of the church or the flock is when the sheep gives birth to sheep. Have you ever seen a shepherd give birth to sheep? No, they don't. It's the sheep that gives birth to sheep. There comes a point, that's why to a certain degree you guys have become spiritually fat. Okay? You have become fatlings. Spiritually obese. Because you are being fed, there comes a point you need to share. When I say share, what I mean is not just speaking, but living out the truth you have been given. In many forms. Because if you don't, then you become spiritual obese. And obese people, if they continue to be obese and they don't exert energy, they end up being patients. Because they can't care themselves, but they are so obese. They eat the most. But they give out the least. You see? And that is a sickness spiritually. Young Gicho found that out also in his church. So, if John received a teaching from Jesus on the subject of hospitality, and Jesus taught us a lot of things about hospitality, and the way Jesus taught is, he said, if you give a prophet a glass of water, you will receive the prophet's reward. Encouraging, now of course, idiom of the day, when you say, receive a glass of water, you're not going to welcome somebody who traveled for 10 weeks and just give him a glass of water. You're going to give him food, you're going to welcome him in your house, and then you're going to give him money to move on. Okay? But that is, when Jesus said, give him a glass of water, that's not as literal as it sounds. It's a total concept of hospitality. You see? And because John had received that kind of training, not only as a Jew, but as a disciple of Jesus, now he is expecting this church to do the same thing. But Diotrephes opposed that. Okay? So, John received the Great Commission from the Lord, and now he is expecting the people likewise to do the Great Commission. Now, my spiritual roots is very heavy on missions. I mean, we're a missionary church. We're very heavy. That's why I emphasize missions a lot. That's my training. I was trained to do missions. I was discipled to do missions, to go. I like going, especially when I was young. I don't like traveling as much because I'm getting old, but that's my spiritual DNA. That is what I'm passing. That's why very frustrating for me if I teach on missions and you don't bite. That means you are not getting it. Okay? So that is just the way it is. So now as a leader, there comes a point you are not just concerned with people receiving the teaching of the truth, but them living it out. And this is what John was saying earlier when he said, I rejoice because you are walking in the truth. He said, I rejoice. You know how it disheartens, for example, when Bishop Ray testifies, itong mga Filipino churches, makunat. Because a lot of those people were affected by our church in the Philippines. And that is not how the gospel was. The first major revival in the Philippines was held by Lester Samuel. It's several weeks of crusades and church planting. That is that spirit. Lester says that he's the only missionary in the world, in world history that left America with an offering bag. He likes the offering bags of Oral Roberts, red velvet, and he said, hey, I like your offering bags. And Oral Roberts told him, oh, you like some? And so he brought some for him in missions. And so and some of the churches that he produced, there's a church in Hong Kong that became a $1 billion church. I mean, that's their liquidity. They have $1 billion. And they were involved in business and all of those things. But it was a very generous ministry that he came up with. So, John in his third letter is addressing this. John the elder heard of the hospitality of Gaius. He heard about how Gaius walks in the truth. Great joy came out of him. Well, because he is seeing that his disciple is now a hospitable person, helping missionaries, helping traveling ministers. In verse 9 to 12, he shows us that we need, your life, he said to guys, is worthy of being imitated. Now, that life being worthy of being imitated is his hospitality. You know, when we bought this building, one of the old church members that we had, and I always emphasize because I'm trying to show you the grace of God. Right now, we have good givers in this church. Not when we started. Not when we started. When I was trying to come up with a down payment for our first building, it was like pulling teeth. And even with this second building, you know, we've got sometimes people being touched. But really, the way how we got this building was the Lord gave me wisdom, and I made $500,000 profit on the old building. I mean, I made money on selling the building because the other church buying it doesn't know negotiation. So did I take advantage of that? Yes. They had bragging that they have money, so I took their money. I sold a less than $400,000 building to almost $900,000 building, which is way above market value. That's how we got this and other means of negotiations, financial scheming. But now we have few people who are showing immense generosity in this house. Yeah, I won't tell you who they are, but when we bought this building, somebody who left the church said, I don't know how he bought that building, he said. I mean, angry that we bought this building. And mentioned one name, maybe brother so-and-so gave the money. When I heard that, I wasn't upset. I said, well, I wish that brother so-and-so gave the money. But really, nobody gave substantial amounts. Say, hey, pastor, say you need I need $200,000 almost for down payment. You need that? Nobody gave me that. I mean, but now it gives me joy because we have some people who are beginning to express generosity. Because I want to see that. Because that's how I was raised spiritually. I am not raised to raise stingy people. To be honest, that's not part of my DNA. I am part of my DNA is to come up with generous disciples. That's my spiritual DNA. We just give. I mean, time and everything else. You remember Pastor Abner? He was working for, I think, NAWASA. I forgot what government agency, NAWASA. So he'll be working 5 days a week. On weekend, he will fly to the province and do Bible and start a church from his own pocket. That's how generous disciples of our church in the Philippines were. And so we expect the same thing. That's why with all encouragement, I encourage you to give. The Lord will bless you. That's part of my spiritual makeup. That's part of our spiritual DNA. That's the only thing I can pass on. I can only give what I was given. And so that is what you ought to be receiving. And so if we are going to be true to the gospel that was passed on to us from generation to generation, part of it is generosity or hospitality. Now, this is the difference between Gaius and Diotrephes. There are several charges now made against Diotrephes. Number one, from what we read, he loves to have the first place among them. Say first place. Was there a contest? When you say first place, there should be second place, right? Was there a trophy? Maybe that's why his name is Diotrephes. Maybe we should read Diotrephes, you know. But why is it first among them? First among them, in the old days, there are first ministers. Now we have prime minister. Prime minister means you are the first minister. The ancient term of prime minister is actually first minister. Meaning there are other ministers, but you are the first minister, meaning you are the prime minister. He wants to be first among them. Who is this Diotrephes guy? He is a leader, a house church leader, who wants to be the first. Remember in the early days, some leaders, this is why I hate flattery. Without mentioning, some people assume that this person is my right hand. I have no right hand. If there's a right hand that I have in this church, that's my wife. Why? Because I have no other hand except my wife. You know, she has no, she gets upset with me. What recourse does she have? She has to stay with me. Unless she wants to divorce me, but even if she hates me, she stays with me. You know. But some people, this leader, that's pastor's right-hand man. I have not proclaimed anybody like that. That's very dangerous. Yeah. That's a very dangerous proposition. That's what happened to Joe Trippis. When he said he wants to be first, he wants to be the right hand of John in that section. What is this? These are leaders who desire to be ahead of. That's very dangerous. Because you can tell the satanic influence of that kind of attitude. Satan wants to raise his throne above the stars. What did Satan want? He wants to be the prime angel. He wants to be the first among the angels. That's why, look, one of the things that we have to watch, to be watched for is this. Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. Okay? A pastor like me, biblically, is a leader among equals. A leader nonetheless, but a leader among equals. Because of the instruction, do not think of yourself more highly. The moment you start thinking, that's why this is when power tripping begins. I am more powerful. I have this title. Hey, do this, do that. That's very dangerous. Very dangerous. Leadership requires that you must be able to give instructions, but as a servant leader. You know, as a servant leader. I can always illustrate my family. If my wife is late, I tell my wife, you have no right to be telling other people to be early. Because if you're always late and you are telling other people to be early, what are you doing? You are making yourself to be first among the many. I hate being waited upon. Yeah, if there is a meeting, I want to be first to show up. I don't like people waiting for me. You know, my son here now, he stays in our second house. And so every time we eat, of course, we have to call him. But there are times they will tell, let's call Dico. I said, no, I don't want to call him. And I'll tell my family, don't call him. So why? He doesn't know. Just don't call him. He knows what time it is and time to eat. Because perhaps you cannot avoid that because people's perception. You don't like to flatter anybody, nor would you like to give an impression that this is your right-hand person. It can bloat somebody's ego. Some people cannot handle this. Some people can't handle flattery or compliments. They will self-destruct. You know, the Mission Impossible. After you hear this message, it will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Some of you, when somebody flatters you, after you hear the message, you will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Because you begin to hear, whoa, I am this good. You know how many people have approached me after I do say, oh, Pastor, you're the best teacher that I have heard. It annoys me. Yeah. Honestly, I'll say, well, praise God. Hey, Pastor, I'm blessed with your message. Me too, I am blessed. That's what I say. Because these are flatteries. Some are very serious. Flatteries. If you don't have the maturity, it can bloat your ego so much, you'll pop. Yeah. And sooner or later, your innards are all over the place. Dio Trippis is like that. He wants to be first among many house churches. This is like, who is this presidential candidate? Mitt Romney. He was a volunteer pastor. He's like that in the Mormon church. I'm not recommending the Mormon church, but Mitt Romney was like that. But now he wants to promote himself. I am the first. Who told you that? I remember I have a treasurer here before, and we will have a meeting, and I'll say, hey, listen, I give the final say how the money is spent. Ever since I've always had that policy, that's what I see in the scriptures. And say, if you want something, write a requisition, you tell me. Right after the meeting, some people will approach him and say, hey, can we buy pizzas? And I'm right there beside him. And he will say, yes, go ahead, I'll just reimburse. And I say, where in the world did you get this authority? I never give that authority to anybody. Even my wife doesn't have the you think she has the authority to disperse the money? It's zero. I never gave her an authority to disperse the money. Yeah. Because it can flatter people. You need to be a leader. You need a certain level of maturity. So you will not be, how does the Bible says? A neophyte is not qualified, so that he will not be. What's the term? John, what's the term? What? So he will. Guys, you read the Bible. What's the term? What's the term? What? Oh, conceited. Is that conceited? The word is conceited. That is dangerous. It almost killed me when I was a young minister. I was new. And I don't know how to handle flattery because I was very young. And some people will give out compliments to you like you're God. It dropped me like a hot potato on the floor. Yeah. So. That's why the best attitude is we need to have a servant's heart. That's why I keep telling you guys, when you have children, raise servants. My children are servants. They serve in my house first. Now they're serving in this house. I mean, even Joel here is part of the cleanup crew now. Brother Willie gave him an assignment, my office. So if he doesn't clean it up, Brother Willie will call him in my office. I don't know where it is, but you have to raise servants. If you don't raise your children as servants, they'll be your headache when they grow up. Yeah. You've got to raise servants. In the churches, I have been endeavoring to raise servants out of all of you. Yeah. Because unless you begin to have that servant heart, you will begin to adopt this attitude of Diotrephes. I'm first among many. He does not receive authority of John. Why? Because John is sending traveling ministers. That's actually what you can get from this. Some traveling ministers will be passing through John in Ephesus. We're going to be going there, and John says, go to the church. I started the church. Look for a guy named Gaius, and look for a guy named Demetrius. So they look for a guy, and Gaius says, oh, you came from John. Good, stay here. Now, Diotrephes is one of the leaders, and Diotrephes says, who said that? I'm not going to spend money on that guy. Who is he? Well, John sent him among us. Who cares? I don't know him. I ought to know him first. Unless he passed through my scrutiny, he will not be ministering here. We will not enter. And he wants them out. He's no longer receiving the authority of John. I'll tell you future-wise, biblically, if this church will continue to be true to what it is to be a church, okay? Say I finally move to the Philippines or somewhere else God sends me. I retain a spiritual authority over the house by virtue of how this house was started. You don't lose that. So say I am in Timbuktu somewhere, and somebody's pastoring this church already, and a minister with me or a disciple of mine says, I'm going to Chicago. I said, good. I have people in Chicago. Contact brother so-and-so. Maybe I'll say,
contact Brother Juni and Brother Willie. And they'll ask the rabbi, tell them, I'll give you a letter. They'll help you. I can do that because of spiritual authority. Okay? And if the discipleship is true, then they should receive them. And say, there's a room in my house. You know, maybe Brother Willie will say, my daughter is already a full colonel in the in the U.S. Army. She doesn't live here. There's an extra room. You can stay there. You know, but you need to water my plants and and do all of those things. That's biblical, you know. But if he says, no, I have the letter from Pastor, sir. Well, who is he anyways? That's Joe Trippi's attitude. You don't honor spiritual leadership. Spiritual leadership doesn't stop because the leader leaves. There is still a relationship that goes on. That is how biblical authority should be, and it should never be abused. Not only that, he began to slander John with his disciples. Because he talks about gossiping maliciously, slanderous words. So there's a lot of house churches. So Joe Trivia says, you know, John has been hiding in Ephesus. We're the one laboring here. We're working hard here. Why does he have the authority to send somebody here? Just to get our money. And he began to bring out slanderous accusations. Of all people, John. You know who John is? You're learning, guys. He's John, you know. And he's the beloved disciple. And he's the guy who wants, along with James, to call a thunder for heaven when the Samaritans refused to open them, right? And later on, he says, I'm going to deal with this guy when I get there. That's how upset John can be. He's already old during this time. And then he refuses to welcome fellow believers. He fails to practice hospitality and provide financial support for itinerant ministers. Listen, if it's a legitimate traveling minister, there is an obligation among churches doing the Great Commission to help. Now again, the itinerant preachers of those days are no longer present today. That's why, I don't know if you felt this, there is a hurricane. And I heard Operations Blessings, Samaritan Purse, churches are grouping in Florida, helping out. You know, the moment I hear those things, something throbs in my spirit. I wish I can help, you know. It's not a baby, it's that's why we send help. It's a responsibility. We are supposed to be hospitable. When Ukraine war broke out, immediately I was thinking, man, I was not thinking about Zelensky. I mean, I don't care about the guy, perhaps, you know. I don't know him. But immediately I was thinking about the fellow Christians. I said, whoa. And then when I heard that Samaritan Purse went there, called Samaritan Purse right away, sent a couple of $1,000. We give good money, you know. We don't give tips. We don't give $10 or feed the $10 feed the Ukrainians. Shame on you, you know. So I sent a couple of thousand right away, and then a couple of thousand through Operations Blessing. Why? Because my heart goes for that. That's part of our spiritual DNA. Are you listening? They're doing. This is my mistake. I don't mention everything, you know. But you guys have been blessing our world. And whatever reward those ministers are having from the Lord, you're going to have them. And you may be just surprised when you go to heaven. If you're stingy, you will not have the reward. I attend Lion's Heart, how come I don't have that? Well, you don't give anything. You're not participating. That's called partnership. You will have my reward, you will have whoever I partner with, their reward. That's the essence of this thing. Because we have different functions. Look, when they do medical mission, you know, when we have medical mission, it's basically Sister Ludi, Cheryl, Jessica. I don't go there. I don't do bondage. Can you just imagine me? Joseph did circumcision, when he was more ignorant than now. But I pity those guys. I hope they did not get infected, Joseph, or it's gone. but I don't go in there and say, hey, listen, I help organize this thing. I release the money for this thing. Let my face be on the Facebook. No, I don't care about those things. But listen to me. Whatever reward is there in that medical mission, I have it also. I may not have bandaged anybody. I did not pap smear anybody. Whatever reward God has for them, I have it too. You see? And you may not have flown or will never fly to mission, but you have it too. For as long as we are partners together. That's why everybody has got to carry his own weight. Amen. It's not equal gifts. It's equal sacrifice. And also, he stops those because Diotrephes doesn't want to help. He also stops those who want to practice hospitality and begin to expel them from the church. He heard, this person wants to help this missionary that John sent. Oh, I help him. And Diotrephes heard it. You are part of my house church and you're helping that person. And he talks to them. I'll kick you out of this. Go find yourself another fellowship. But for as long as you're attending my house church, you will not help those. Now, it's not like today we have cars, People, if they don't like you, they just transfer to their church. How are they going to transfer? There's no other house church. The next house church is 5 mountains away. Where are you going to go? So he began to expel. When you are expelled, I'm going to church. Let me leave at 12 midnight, okay, so I can be there by the time the church service begins. They cannot just do that. Some of you have been with me in Israel. The cities are small. You have one house church there. Basically, that's what it is. Outside, there's another house church. That's how it was. That's why being part of a house church is essential for their spiritual growth. There is nowhere else to go. But right now, of course, people can gossip. You don't even have to show up. You can just do Facebook. Or you can just text and do gossip and ruin John's reputation. That's what Diotrephes was doing. Yeah. I know because I went through that. I'm still going through that. Some people try to ruin my reputation and I don't even know them. They just do it through Facebook, through internet and text messages. That's a Diotrephes attitude. That's why John says, when I get there, I'm going to face him. I'm going to rebuke him. Thank God there is no Facebook in the first century, or the gospel would not reach us. They'll self-destruct in 5 seconds. Yeah. Because in the first century, almost everybody, listen to this, is a gossip. That's how they preach the gospel. They gossip the gospel. But good kind, There's a bad kind and there's a good kind. Now it's just bad kind, But good kind and bad kind. There are many things we can derive from those charges. Number one, it seems like Christians whom Diotrephes refused to support are those who came from John the Elder and are representatives from John. You know that in a different way. There are organizations in the Philippines that when we go, other ministers will not help because they come from us. Yeah. The question is, why would Diotrephes refuse to receive them? Remember what I said earlier? He was not questioned about his orthodoxy. He did not leave the church. He wants to have first place. He wants to be consulted first. I I was disciplining somebody here before. And so some of the relatives needs to be notified, not all, but some. There's a family I did not notify. They have no business knowing what's going on. And one of the kids came to me, was very upset. He came to my office and said, Pastor, sir, I've heard that my relatives, this happened. I said, yeah. Was very upset. I didn't know. Nobody told me. I said, good. But I said, look, you're relatives, but you have nothing to do with each other anyways. You know how some relatives, you're just relatives because you are born with the last name. But some of you have relatives you don't even want to see. You are relatives, but you have no relativeness. It's just because you have the same last name, or your great, super great grandfather met each other and shook hands. That's what happened. And so he came to my office and said, you have to, nobody told me. I said, you don't need to know. I said, you guys have no relationship anyways. And he got upset. And he told me this. Okay, we will not leave the church, he said. But next time, Pastor, so he told me this. Next time something happened to them, you tell me. I looked at him and said, no. I said, you have no business knowing anything. And that's how the meeting ends. You know what they did? They left the church. And you know what else? From time to time, they come back. You know when they come back? Every time we have food. But that's just how it is. But Joe Trippis is somebody you have to inform him first. I mean, look, in church, really you don't need to know everything. Gossip or busybodies wants to know everything. Why do you want to know everything? You want to know the latest gossip, what's happening. I didn't know what happened. Thank God you didn't know. There are so many times news will come to me and say, please, I don't want to know. Oh, Pastor, say you have to know this. No, I don't need to know this. You know how it pollutes the mind? And have you noticed when gossip comes to you, you begin to be upset with somebody, you don't even shake hands with that person. No, you're very upset. Talaga naman, talaga naman. Pag Pilipino, talaga naman. Palakuling kita rin. Because you don't know how to handle knowledge. When you don't know how to handle knowledge, it can destroy you. Yeah, it can destroy you. What? That happened? I can't believe this. Well, you are full of unbelief anyways. Who expects you to believe, you know? And so now a round of gossip began. We have to stop that. Dio Trippis is like that guy. That's why some people accuse women of being gossip. Dio Trippis is not a female. Okay? I don't know if he's an ex-man, but he is not female. But he is the number one gossip in the church. It's a male to his everlasting shame, you know. I mean, he ruins the reputation of men, of males, you know. So again, why did he refuse them? Precisely because they came from John. So what is the message here? When John said he wants to be first, that means he now even wants to be above John. Listen. Wherever you go, Joseph is in the military now. Okay. He's first lieutenant, right? I don't know why he's first. There are many first lieutenants. I don't know what first lieutenant, but there are many first lieutenants. Why are you called first? You know, He's my firstborn. That's true. What I was saying? I'm talking some. I was leadership. Okay. He will have captains and colonels that he will be smarter. And he will have a better decision. he will have better morals. But it doesn't matter. He's still first lieutenant, not a colonel. So I like the military. You obey because you are commanded, not because he is smarter. Now, how many of you believe? Don't raise your hands, don't nod, don't do anything. Just listen to it. Who among you believe that Joe Biden is the smartest American alive today? Don't answer. But he is still the president. Yeah. He is still, I don't care if he hates guns. He is still the commander-in-chief of the best guns in the world. Can you imagine this? You are the commander-in-chief in charge of the most destructive weapons of warfare that man has ever known, and yet you hate guns? If you hate that little pistol, what will you do with the nuclear warheads? You are the commander-in-chief, for goodness sake. You can't hate those things. You have to respect those things. But that is what leadership is. Now, Diotrephes decided, hey, listen, John is gone. He is old. So somebody has got to be first. I am the first. That's dangerous. Okay? That is dangerous. Because according to the Bible, nobody takes this honor, talking about the high priest, nobody takes this honor upon themselves. It is given. No, I really like this. There's a television show that I've seen before, and I wrote down, because the son wants power, and said, son, I never desire power. He said, power attracts the worst and corrupts the best. When power is given, it's thrown before you. For you to take it, you have to stoop down, bend your knees to take it. You have to humble yourself. The only way you can receive power properly is if you humble yourself. You should never desire it. Yeah, you should never desire it. And Diotrephes could not wait. He wants his power playing now. He wants to make sure that the moment John is dead, he is the chief bishop. You know, he's the chief minister among the ministers, because there are many house pastors, house church pastors in those days. That's why anybody coming from John, he refused. Yeah, he refused. It's like in the family, you know. The head of the house is the man, and so the man says to the child, "Oh, do this." And the mom said, "Why are you doing that?" Oh, dad says, "Well, who's your dad anyways?" Who is your dad anyways? Well, the mom just said, "I am the first," not the dad. Yeah. That's why in my family I have the veto power. I don't care what they discuss. I have the veto power. The moment the woman begins to say, "Well, who's your dad anyway?" You want to be the first now. That's a very dangerous position. You will self-destruct. Some suggest that Diotrephes is in charge just of one little house church, but insecure people are like that. Insecure people, they bloat what they have and make it look bigger than it really is. Yeah. Make it. That's why when we go to missions, I keep telling the pastors there, hey, listen, most of you have churches bigger than what I pastor. I tell them that, you know. Because they assume, because we go there with blessings and we teach, they assume, I will not be surprised if in their minds we have thousands of members, the way they talk, you know. People come to, where is your head office? Where is your church here? I will just tell them, you know, my office in Metro Manila is in Quezon City, because the address of our organization is Brother Willie's house. I don't even tell them we come from Chicago. Because the moment you say Chicago, ding, their eyeglasses became like dollar signs. You know, shoo, yeah. And so I like telling them I eat dogs, because then it keeps you grounded, you know. What? You eat dogs? It's illegal. Yeah. Well, you guys do a lot of things that are illegal also, you know. So you cannot, you have to maintain that servant attitude. So, because John is old, and now there is a power positioning. I don't know what kind of wealth he has or what kind of influence, but Diotrephes is now throwing his weight around. Well, this house church that I pastor is the first house church. Don't do that. Listen, at the end of the day, we are just all servants. I'll tell you this, avoid throwing your weight around. Even if you're obese, okay? They didn't get that. Okay. Let's move on, okay? So Diotrephes rejected John's authority. Now, this assault that Diotrephes launched against John is not just an attack against John. It is an attack against Christian unity. Unity. Now listen. In a family, for example, you attack the father or the mother or one of the children. You attack the unity of the family. Yeah. But more so when you attack the head of the family. You just destroy its unity. In the church. Because of my position, if you attack me, you attack the unity of the house. So the Bible says, what does the Bible says? Attack, the word is not attack. Strike, yeah. Strike the shepherd, yeah. Strike the shepherd and the sheep scatters. It didn't say strike the sheep. Why? Because there are sheep that goes astray, really. But the flock remains united because they have one shepherd. Strike the shepherd and the sheep scatters. Yeah. That's why it's, for me, it's how do you call that? There's a term. I forgot the term. You know, when, maybe because it's already late, so I'm forgetting terms now. I'll remember later. When communism starts striking Hong Kong, now it's fully communist. Lester will always go there because he founded 2 churches in Hong Kong. One is a billionaire church right now. Very popular church. And every time Lester goes there, the spiritual children will come, the pastors will come, even from the mainland. He'll be traveling with them. And every time he leaves, there will be some pastors who will go with him to the airport to see him out. But now the communist starts closing in because his church is rich. So the pastor and the board the communists talk to them and say, we hate Lester. We don't want you to have anything to do with Lester. So the last visit, this was before he died. The last visit of Lester, I felt sad when he was relaying his story. He said, I went to the church that I always go to. And he said, nobody meets me in the airport except the pastor who will drive me. He said, he felt something unusual. He said, it never happened because thousands of people got healed. He said, nobody met me in the airport. And he said, it seems like people are avoiding him. They never even have him preach in the church on his last visit. And then the pastor told him, the communists came to us and forbade any relationship with you. And he was hurt. You can tell he was hurt because these are my spiritual children, and now they cut me off from them. And so he has to go back. And he said, when I went to the airport, he said, nobody. This time it was, I think, the Hong Kong International Airport was finished. But he said, I went to the airport and nobody, for the first time in decades, said, nobody saw me out. Yeah. Nobody saw me out. And I was listening to this old man when he was testifying. Oh, you can feel the brokenness of his heart. It's like you're not, when you're a welcome guest in a house. Hey, have dinner with us. So you rang the bell. What happened? The host come out. Hey, welcome. You need slippers? What do you need? Let me have your coat. Let me have your coat. Anything you need? The dinner is going to be ready in 5 minutes. Anything you want to drink? Sit here. And then the dinner is over. The fellowship is over. The host will not tell you, go. Oh, you're ready to go? Oh, I'm sad to see you go. We'll do it again next time, okay? Here's your coat. And then you will walk them out. You don't just tell them, lock the door behind you. No, you walk them out. That's being hospitable. And when Lester was saying that, it hurt me inside. Because the way we treat him in the Philippines during our time was royally, because he is the spiritual father of Philippine Christianity, born again, Pentecostal. He is the premier revivalist there. And he is old when he was saying that. He said, nobody for the first time saw me out. This is what Joel Tripis was doing. Now, the wish of John for Gaius is in verse 2, because he lives in the truth, is, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospereth. Okay. By the way, sometimes the letters of my outline is getting smaller, so in application, I'll tell you this. Most of you came from other churches. And that is common in the type of Christianity that we're living right now. And you come to this church now. Listen, do not badmouth your former pastors. Okay? Don't do that. Don't come and tell people, my former church, our pastor is like. Don't do that. Because that minister has his own limitations. Even as you have your own limitations. But remember this. When you were in that church, that's where you were being fed. No matter how little the food may be, that's where you were being fed. Do not badmouth those. And comes to family, especially children. Do not lose respect of your parents. Are you here? Doesn't matter if you become more educated than your parents. Do not lose respect. Always hold your parents in high regard. There is a special, you look at the Bible, there is a special punishment, discipline reserved by God for ungrateful children, especially rebellious children. Read your Bible. There's a special punishment reserved for rebellious children. Some of the worst discipline in the Bible is against rebellious children. I can say this because no matter how I grew up, I never really hated my parents. I don't harbor any bitterness against them. They raised me up and I saw their struggles. And no matter how difficult it is, my father always endeavored to put food on our table. Now, some of you are really blessed because you have multiple clothes. When I was in elementary, in high school, I have 2 sets of clothes for school. Yeah. I come home, take off the one that I just used, and my mother in the afternoon will wash it right away. Following day, she will iron it, make it like brand new, and I will wear the other one. I have only 2 sets. And my mother never complained about those. I saw those, so I am a lot more educated than anybody in my family, but I always held my parents in high regard. Okay? If you don't do that, you will lose some of the blessings that God has for the children. That even if your parents wants to bless you, you will not be able to receive it. Yeah. Of course, I bless my kids and I pray for them. But if they become rebellious, even if I pray for them, they will not receive that blessing. Because certain type of a vessel is needed for certain type of blessings. And one of the reasons why John wants Gaius to continue in the truth is because he's about to die. When you're about to die, you want to pass on your blessing. I saw this, the one who gave my wife house. Elizabeth wants to give everything to Anne. If not, I'll tell you this, if not for me, her daughter would receive nothing. My wife will be rich. Yeah. Because she doesn't see that her daughter deserves whatever she has. I think she only calls for money. Every time she calls asking for money and broke the heart of her mom. She doesn't like to give anything to her daughter. Meaning she has the blessing, but she found the vessel unworthy to receive it. I'm the one who rejected it. If I had not rejected, Anne will have $700,000 more, aside from the house that was given. $700,000. For me, it's just a tool. It's money. It can be earned. But I want her soul saved. It's because she thought, my daughter is no good. She doesn't deserve this. Yeah. So, what are the divine wishes aside from that? Number one, do not imitate what is evil. Meaning, do not imitate George Rippis. You guys, be careful whom you follow. I am careful whom I follow. My primary models in ministry are people like Lester Samuel. You know, I like reading the story of Pat Robertson. He's really, and now I just bought a book on the biography of Bibi Netanyahu. I read it when I come back from Egypt. But I'm liking his background. I am liking where he came from and the philosophy of his life. So I want to learn from that. But for goodness sake, follow good examples. Imitate, do not imitate what is evil. John says, imitate what is good. Good is not just good. Remember I told you in the Hebrew mind, a good person is a generous person. Imitate those who are generous. For example, if you are struggling on paying your tithes or giving offerings, for goodness sake, don't ask those people who don't give. Ask people who give. And they'll tell you that it is more blessed to give than to receive. Do not ask those who are doing evil. Ask those who are doing good. Our problem is we imitate those. You know why our children became rebellious? They are imitating rebellious people. They watch television. You don't censor it. You don't filter what they watch. And so they copy the language, everything else. And you wonder, why are they like this? They are imitating evil. Let them imitate what is good. Thank God my kids are grown up because they like watching, what's that? Puppet show. Sesame Street, yeah. Now, I heard some of them became X-Men now, you know. I heard that Ernie and, who is that, Bert? Yeah. My kids don't have to watch that anymore, you know. John loves Barney. Purple is now purple. You know, so they keep changing these things. But for example, if my kids are just born today, I'm not going to tell them to watch those shows anymore. Yeah. There are so many things. That's why parents, you've got to be watchful. Our kids needs to follow what is good, not what is evil. I told my kids that when they're growing up. Well, they will follow some friends. What about some kids in the church? In the church, they tell me. Because some parents here don't discipline their kids. What about, I said, I'm not their parents. You want their parents? I tell my kids, do you want their parents? Go. Be adopted by them. But I'm not your, they are not your parents. I tell them, because evil will try to pollute you, even as good will try to disciple you. And then John said, to speak well of Demetrius. Why did John mention Demetrius? He is giving Gaius an ally, because now Gaius is feeling alone, because Diotrephes is against him now. And he speaks well of Demetrius. Why? Because Demetrius has good reputation. He's giving Gaius an ally, someone who can support him and whom he can support also faithfully and walk together in the truth. They say misery looks for company. So is doing good. Although our main partner is Jesus Christ, we like partnering with people. That's why I love Brother Willie. He's missions minded. He's a giver. He's generous. I love partnership with him, because we have no problem with moral standards. We have no problem with ethics and all of those things. I like walking with him. How about some? You don't want to walk with them. Look for this 2023, with the growing pressure around us. Look for good company around you. There are some people whom you are not supposed to be with. They are your missions field. You're not supposed to be with them, especially if they're doing evil or they're not following God. It doesn't matter if they attend this church or not attend this church. Follow, imitate what is good. Do not imitate what is evil. Okay? Some of you will be married in the future. Some of you are newly married. Listen, for the men, do not imitate under desires. You'll become one. That's not good. Henpecs. That's not good. Imitate those who knows how to take leadership in their houses. You're raising kids. Do not imitate parents with undisciplined kids. Imitate parents with disciplined kids. Because if you imitate what is evil, you will turn evil. If you imitate what is good, you will turn good. But the problem is, the evil talks more. You know, and they make full use of the social media, and so this slanderous things keeps raging on. But this is how you can go back to verse 2. I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospereth. Now there's wholeness now. If you guard yourself like this, then your emotions will be healthy. I would like to think that after serving God for over 40 years, I have grown in health in this area. I can really walk away. Yeah. If I have friends turn bad, I can really walk away with no regrets. That's why Brother Willie keeps saying, you're full of intestines, no heart, you know. Because he's very emotional. But you do evil, you will not follow God. I'll walk away. I'll walk away. And I'll tell my kids. Hey, I don't like the shows that you're watching. Stop that. Hey, I don't like the friends that you're being with. Cut it off. Now they may struggle, and they've seen them struggle. I'll do that. Yeah, because you imitate what is good. And do not follow what is evil. Amen? Happy New Year! There is no food after this, okay? So, but we will have communion, okay? We'll have communion. Praise God.